Want to see this shirt fully restored and find out how we did it? Watch this video. Hello there, Will here from We Fix Kits. In this week's video, we're going to take you through part 2 of the restoration of this beautiful 1990 Manchester United Cup Cup shirt. What you'll remember from the last video is we took off 3 name sets from the back, and in today's video we're going to take you through how we've created the new one to cover as much of the residue as possible and show you the finished outcome. So I'm going to cut over now to share the screen through Silhouette Studio. So what we have here is we've opened up Silhouette Studio Business Edition. I like to use the Business Edition rather than the Standard Edition because it gives you some extra tools down the side here and what have you. So first thing we're going to do, and a fair amount of this has been pre-prepped for expedience, but first thing you're going to do is need to find a photo of the original shirt, ideally with the number on it that you want to put on. So here is Mark Hughes wearing the shirt. You can see the type of font. You can see there's no Adidas trefoil in it. Sometimes people put Adidas trefoil in it, which is fine, but it's just not representative of that famous night. So now we know what the number looked like as the original. We then need to choose the right font. Now, again, I have already created the number 10, and that's it down here. So I've matched up the size to what initially will fit the shirt. So I guess for this particular restore, we need to get the balance between authenticity and covering any residue that's been left by the taking off of the other name set. As you saw in the last video, and here's a photo of the shirt, there's a fair amount of red residue. So what we need to do is kind of, like I say, get a balance between a representative font, but also something that covers as much of the residue as possible. So here is the picture of the shirt. Now, as I've talked about in former videos, you should take a picture with a ruler in. And the reason for doing that is so that you can get the scale of this photo exact to meet or match with what you're putting on it. So if you can see up here, this little box, this box is near enough 2 centimeters, 20 mil in size. So you create that using the square tool. And then once you have that, let's just move the picture to the side. Once you have that, you know that you can scale this box, which is 2 centimeters in width, to 2 centimeters on the ruler. And then once you have got that, you know that the picture is the correct scale for the screen. So if we zoom in, here we go. Look, if I just match it up, there you can see, look, 2 centimeters wide, and it matches with 2 centimeters on the ruler. So we now know that anything we create on the screen using the measurements on the screen, 2 centimeters, is going to match exactly what we see on the screen in terms of measurements for the shirt. So if we now zoom back out, let's get rid of that box because that's done its job now. We won't need that box again. What we now need to do is take the font that we created and match it up to the image. Now, when you just type a normal font, and we just do a normal number 10, and we turn that into the font, I think it's this one, here we go. You'll see that it's in 72 points, so you can change that to 44 point or what have you, and you can work with it using the font sizes. But what I prefer to do is to actually, this is a different font because of the tail on the one, but the point is still the same. I prefer to right click, release compound path, and then the measurements become more exact. So we can match up the measurements. It doesn't have any sort of space above or below the letter. and then we can just drag using the bars to get it to the right size. Now, if you want to edit individual components of a letter, if we double click, nothing happens because it's still grouped. So we need to then ungroup it, and then all of the individual components of the letter become editable. So look, you can double click on it and you can drag the points around to your heart's content, and you do that for the other ones. And what that means you can do is, once you have a base font and you have it over the top of the image, you can drag aspects of the font around to cover the residue. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just delete this because we don't need that anymore. That was just to kind of show you what we were doing. We're now going to move this up. Actually, before I move it up, so that you might be thinking, well, why is there a box underneath? Well, the reason there's a box underneath is because sometimes with a photo, it's very difficult to get the number exactly horizontal, especially when there's multiple layers of residue on there. So what you can try and do is draw a line across, but the challenge with doing that is getting it exactly horizontal again. So if we zoom in to that letter, that line, you can see it's not quite horizontal. So if we try it again, you can do it. It is possible. It just takes a bit of time. It's a little bit of a faff. So what I prefer to do to get a horizontal line, let's stop that, delete these two. What I prefer to do to get a horizontal line is to use the box tool. So if I go like this or draw a rectangle, I know that that is absolutely horizontal. There's no worry about when I took my finger off the trackpad or off the mouse that it suddenly went a little bit at an angle. So that's what I've done under here, is I have created this rectangle to ensure that the numbers are horizontal to one another. So if we zoom back out, and again, this has now done its job, so we don't have to worry about that. If we just group all of that together, right click, group. So now we know that we can move it around and not worry that an individual component might get missed and therefore not move with the rest of the number. We can drag it over the 10 and position it just to make sure that it's going to cover as much of the residue as possible. Now, like I say, this was a really challenging shirt. There's a fair amount of quite obvious residue. So what I have done since taking this photo is I found the bits where there are some dark specks. So there that you'll be visible. This line here that will be visible. This line here. And I worked on it a little bit further to take those bits off. So although it's not going to be perfect, it's going to be pretty good. So now we need to just position the shirt behind the 10 to make sure we're happy with it. And like I said earlier, originally the tails here of the one were a lot further down here. And that's where I say you have to get the balance between the actual font from the time and a similar font that covers residue. I would personally rather have a slightly different font that covers more of the residue than a font with a slightly smaller tail but that leaves nasty residue. So I dragged all of these lines up, and here, this tail here, I dragged these down, so they were originally up here, to match and cover the residue. So now if we look, that is pretty good. Now this here, this band here is going to have flocking, but this band here is one where you'll have to weed it and pull it out. Same as here, there will be flock. Here, you'll pull it out. So it's not going to be perfect, but you can try and position things just to make sure you get as much of the flock portion covering the residue as possible. Now, I would say if I just move it over a little bit further, there you go. See, it gets this and it covers it there. So now this number 10 is now ready to cut. So if we zoom out and we move the picture over there, let's move my cues over there, and this is our canvas, our cutting mat, where we're going to position the number 10. Depending on what you're doing, you might want to show the cut border or the print border. We're not doing any printing here, so we're just going to show the cut border. Now, when you're cutting flock, you have to make sure that you cut in reverse. So you're cutting the back of the flock, not the front of the flock. Because of that, we're going to need to flip the 10. So you go Object, Mirror, Flip horizontally, and now it becomes the inverse of the number 10, or the back of it. And we can position that so there's not too much wastage, but there's enough of a gap to have a little bit of a safety net. And now, again, I don't like wasting anything, so I'm going to change the width of the canvas so that it's exactly the size we need. Right, so 280 by 250. What I will do is I will now cut a piece of red flock that is, I give it an extra 5mm each way, so I'll cut it 285 by 255, and I'm going to go ahead and cut. Now, just so you know, in fact, let's quickly save this file. Save. I already had it saved as Man United Cutler's Cut number 10. To send it to cut, it's pretty straightforward. You hit send. Now, what you can see here is it's currently set to cut edge. So you want to make sure that you select it all and you select cut. And now that gives you all of the cut lines. Let me turn on the Cameo. I do like this cutter. Some people like Cry Cut, some people like Silhouette. My personal opinion is that the Silhouette soft provides more capabilities than the Cry Cut software, so that's why I prefer the Silhouette. So what we do is you choose the material. So I've got heat transfer flock. I know for this particular type of flock, the blade depth needs to be a little bit more, so I'd go with 4. Choose make sure the right blade is selected. See here that says no media is loaded. That's because, as the name suggests, I haven't loaded the flock yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of flock, 285 by 255, load it in to the cutter and hit send. Okay, and so what you'll see next is the cutter doing the cutting, and then hopefully a nice finished article afterwards. And here is the finished article. You'll see there's a nice red flock number 10 on, in homage to Mark Hughes. If you look closely, there is still a bit of residue. To be honest, you're never going to get rid of everything, especially not with a red on white shirt. But compared to what it did look like, I'm pretty pleased with that. So I hope you found this video useful. If you have, then please click like and subscribe to our channel for all future videos. Thank you very much.